got to the point that we would have a 20-minute bishopric meeting before church, and then after church would be like another 20-30 minutes. An hour after church was about the most that we would stay.
We have somebody that will audit our most valuable resource, which is tithing. But I also think that we should have somebody that audits an even more valuable resource, which is our time.
I'm pretty sure that there was a fallen angel that created text groups.
Oh, absolutely.
I hate it.
And now, let us reason together.
Welcome back to Salty Saints. My name is Hayden Holm, and today I'm joined by a guest, Cade Price. He is shaking things up when it comes to the organization of the ward and how meetings are run. He responded to a video we did about the endless meetings that some leaders seem to be trapped in at church. And he mentioned things that blew my mind, and I knew that I needed to get him onto the podcast. So Cade is here to walk us through some of the things that he's done in other wards, and hopefully, if there's anyone out there who's stuck in a ward with endless meetings, they can take some things away from this and hopefully get out of some of those meetings. But Cade, I would love for you to kind of give a little bit of intro, kind of what's your background, and then some of those changes that you made.
Yeah, hey, it's great being on, and hopefully somebody can take something, right? Like
Totally.
What I've found is that every ward in every stake does things differently, and that's what's kind of great about it is that we can kind of have our own flow. So I've been an executive secretary for I think 5 different bishops,
Wow.
and served in a bishopric, and just in a lot of different places within the church. And I've got to see bishops do things very differently. And really sitting in ward councils is when you see the most difference, because serving just a lot of different callings. You're in lots of ward councils. I've been in ward councils most of my adult life.
Yeah.
And you get to see that change through the bishops. Being the executive secretary, though, I think that's like one of my favorite callings, because one, you're not in the bishopric. You're not in the bishopric.
Yeah.
And so when they have a stake bishopric meeting, you don't have to go because you're not in the bishopric. I'm just kidding. You should still probably go. But
yeah, like you're technically bishopric, but not officially bishopric.
In the handbook, you're not. We'd make sure we'd remind them of that.
It's bishopric light is what we can call it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. You have no authority.
Yeah. As
an executive secretary and a ward clerk, you have no authority, but you sit in on all the meetings and you support that bishopric and you support the ward council. And so you get to watch and see how the behind the scenes of the church and of the ward works. And you get to see the members in a bit of a different light. And you get to see, as you sit in a bishopric and you're pondering and praying about a calling, and all of you kind of come to this name and you're like, why in the world would we call that person? That person does not fit this calling. And you do anyways, and you just watch the Lord take them and just make them the perfect person for that calling. You're like, that's awesome.
So cool.
And it's so much fun. And so as an executive secretary, the one thing that I really focused on was to do as much of the administration as I could, so the bishopric could do the ministering. So I didn't want them tied up in administering, just ministering. Now there's things obviously that the bishop has to do that I couldn't do.
Yeah.
But I took on a lot of additional responsibilities just so the bishop didn't have to, or the bishopric didn't have to. I want them to minister.
Yeah. So what kind of responsibilities are we talking here?
Well, I mean, there would just be simple things, right? Like when somebody would come in for a patriarchal blessing recommend interview, I could do most of that stuff as an executive secretary, except for click the print button. For some reason, I don't have the print button when you log in.
Right.
And so I would set it all up. I would have it ready to go. So all the bishop had to do was click one button, and then it would be submitted to the patriarch.
Wow.
And then, temple recommends, between setting those appointments, reminding them to be there. That's the big thing for me, and not wasting the bishopric's time, is to make sure that schedule is full. Right. I don't want them sitting around waiting for a half hour for somebody, right? Make sure that schedule's actually full so we can shrink down the amount of time that they have to be away from their family.
Totally.
And so make sure that they're there, have that all scheduled, and then be ready to go to either for the youth, be ready to print that recommend off once I got the nod from whatever bishopric member, or click the button. I don't, we don't, at least in our stake, and I think most stakes in the US, we don't use the book anymore. It's all online.
Yeah.
And so when the temple recommend, I get the nod from the bishopric member, I click that button, and then it goes onto the stake, and we're ready to move on to the next, right? Just little things like that.
Yeah.
And for our tithing in the last bishopric I was in, we would send out a letter and invite members to come at a specific time. This is when you're assigned time to do your
interesting.
tithing declaration.
So you didn't post a sign-up sheet or anything?
Nope.
You're like, hey, this is your slot. Don't miss it.
Right. And then I would spend, time texting and reminding them, okay, here's your time. Oh, we forgot, we're not going to be here. And then I would start slotting people in, again, to maximize the bishop's time. And it was my goal to have everything that we could do after church on Sunday, so that the bishopric didn't have to do extra stuff during the week.
Right.
So that they weren't away from their families. So in our stake, Tuesday night is when we do our young men, young women's. And so Tuesday night is the only other night that they're going to be there doing their calling outside of, they do lots of visits and things like that as they feel prompted. But the sit down interviews, tried to do that all just on Sunday.
Yeah.
After church, so that we could maximize their time. Right.
That's
and so
awesome.
that's where all of this kind of comes in, like maximizing time. How can we maximize time?
Right.
We're busy people.
Totally. Yeah.
And I'm in a rural area, so I've got lots of ranchers. Everybody's got a side hustle, right? Like we're busy. And so sitting in an hour to 2 hour meeting talking about the exact same thing we did last week is a waste of time.
Right. It just kills your soul a little bit. Like your eyes just start to glaze over and you're just like, I can't take this anymore, please.
Right. Yeah. And there is a tradition to that, right? Like, well, we're going to have ward council and we're going to talk about the exact same thing we did last time.
Right.
And nothing changed, right? Like there might be a little bit of movement, but nothing changed. And calendaring is another one that just sucks up so much time within meetings. And so the bishop that I was with at the time hated meetings. He hated them. And everybody else is like, yeah, we hate them too. So let's see what we can do to narrow these down. And we got to the point that we would have a 20-minute bishopric meeting before church. And then which was just to be like, hey, what do we need to do today? Where are we at with our schedule? With sacrament meeting? We got it all laid out. And then after church would be like another 20, 30 minutes. Okay, what happened during, church? Right. What do we need to follow up on? Okay, what do we need to have ready to go?
Setting aparts, things like that.
Yeah, yep. And then obviously we would have all our interviews and stuff like that. But an hour after church was about the most that we would stay.
Whoa.
And I would watch bishops come in well before we did, who had church after us, and then leave way after us. And like we would
I've been in bishoprics like that, where I've been in like the 8 hour, this is why like I made a whole video about it. I've been in those like 8 to 9 hour meeting on Sunday bishoprics, and I'm like, oh man, clocking in at 7 and getting home at 5 is rough. It is so rough.
Right.
So you had all of these goals, you had these meetings. Your goal is to just trim them up. So how did you get there? How did you get to that point of like 20-minute meetings? Yeah, go for it.
This is the biggest thing. Communication and collaboration, right? Like that's the whole reason that we have the meeting, is so we can communicate and collaborate. Well, 90% of this can be done not in a meeting and during the week.
You don't say. That's wild. Yeah.
Okay. And so, let's use text groups. Listen, I'm pretty sure that there was a fallen angel that created text groups.
Oh, absolutely.
I hate them. They're like, this will tick people off more than anything. Let's create a text group. I hate text groups. So they
are so inefficient. The problem with text groups, and I've been in so many of those wards where it's like, well, why don't we just text? It's like, okay, the problem is you don't have half of the context added into your phone. So like you get a bunch of these random numbers. You don't know who's talking to you. And then you have about
Right.
like 30 callings that are changing every month. So you have to start up new threads. You can't add people in.
Right.
And so then you can't see the history. And so you're getting all these random text messages. So you have to dive through like 50 random threads just to figure out what's going on and who's talking to you half the time.
Right.
So just a mess. Yeah.
You're absolutely. It's a breeding ground of confusion and miscommunication and misunderstanding.
Totally.
Right. Like
Yeah.
it's awful. So I implemented Slack because I had used Slack at work professionally for a long time. I have a Slack just for my house and my family.
That's awesome.
Right. Like,
yeah.
And I my wife hates it and loves it because I love home automation. And so
Yeah.
my home automation like posts to Slack, like, hey, the washer's done, the fridge door got left open, like all these things. Like,
look
just
at
like,
that.
hey,
You're
Slack.
in this deep. Yeah. That's awesome.
Anyway, so I'm like, let's implement Slack. Now, I'm also a volunteer EMT.
Yeah.
And I'm on the board for EMTs. And so we did the same thing there in order to keep conversations going. So I'd already been doing it for a little bit with a volunteer group. Like, well, this is just going to be perfect for a bishopric and a ward council. And so really, so you got like Slack and Discord and Mattermost and Teams. Like, there's a few different ones that you can do for free. But we're using Slack because I'm just most familiar with Slack. So I just created a Slack group for our ward and then put the bishopric and the ward council on that. And then individual channels for each organization or topic, and then marked them as public. So the bishopric, it was public, or it was private, sorry, not public.
Right.
Marked them all private, right? So it was just the bishopric would be in that one. And then we, throughout the week, would continue to have conversations about callings, potential callings, needs that, within the ward and things like that, right? Like, hey,
right.
This and this has happened, and da. So we'd have these conversations. And the same with the ward council. If there was a ward council, Slack that just had the presidency or the presidents, not the full presidency, which you can, but those get changed a little bit more. You got a lot more people. And so we kind of just left it as the presidents. And then me as an executive secretary would be like, hey, here are the things that we talked about in ward council, and here were the assignments. And so halfway through the week, I'd send those back out. Here are the assignments. Where are we at with them?
So would you start a lot of these conversations that were happening?
Yes.
Like, hey, here are your assignments, checking in, following up on that kind of stuff. So that's how the conversations were happening. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And so when it came to a bishopric meeting, and you have every one of those on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
We'd already talked about most of the stuff. So all we had to do in bishopric meeting was just follow up in person, right?
Totally.
Like, hey, so I see we're here. Is that right? Yep. That got taken care of. Okay. What about this? Yep. Looked like it got taken care of. And there just wasn't a lot to talk about anymore in person because we had done it already.
Yeah.
We'd had those conversations.
So let me see if I got this straight. So you would create a separate channel in Slack basically for every meeting. So a channel would replace the meeting. Is that right? So you'd have like...
Well, it would really be the organization.
Okay.
So I had like the bishopric, right? That's where we would have the bishopric conversations. That not the ward council needed to know all of that, right?
Yeah.
Like we're talking about callings. Well, that's not privy to the full ward council.
Totally.
And then each organization had an elders quorum one, a relief society one, a primary one, young women's, young men, right? Like Sunday school. And then we could have that conversation there with that member of that organization. So if there was a calling that the relief society was looking to fill, she could submit, she could put that on Slack, and only the bishopric and the relief society president would have that information. Hey, this is the calling. Here's a couple of names. Okay, let's think about it. We'll pray about it throughout the week, right? And then we can continue that conversation right there. And then in ward council would be, everybody that was in Slack would be in the ward council, where then we would continue, the more general conversations. But then we had one for welfare. Okay, so these are the welfare conversations that we're having. Again, so that's just to be organized. That could contain the whole ward council. Yeah. But maybe in our case, it was just the relief society president, the elders quorum president, and the bishopric. Because they're the ones that are going to sit down and do the budget with that family, and how's the family doing? Have they reached their goals? What do we need to do next, right?
Yeah.
And have that conversation. So now the conversation of welfare was here, not just in this big general one, right?
Right, not in ward council. Because I have been in so many ward councils where that's pretty much like half of the meeting is just talking about, well, it's the spiritual thought, and then the other half of the meeting is just going back and forth about people in need, families in need, and like about 3 or 4 other organizations don't really need to be a part of that discussion, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. So
So
you're
the Sunday
cutting out
school
all of that
president,
inefficiency. Yeah.
although the Sunday school president could have input to the welfare
Yeah.
conversation, he's really not a part of the conversation, right? Like he doesn't need to
Totally.
be the full part of that conversation. And so,
Right.
yeah, you're just sitting there waiting for your opportunity. You mentioned half the time doing the spiritual thought. That's another thing, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I struggled with this, and so I would make the assignments for we'd have our spiritual thought, our handbook training,
Yeah.
and prayer. Well, prayer, spiritual handbook training, and then I would rotate through the ward council and on those assignments. There were some times where individuals that I wouldn't give them that assignment because it would turn into a 10-minute spiritual thought.
Right.
And
Right.
so we scheduled ward council to be just before sacrament meeting, 1 hour, and then to end 10 minutes before sacrament meeting, so the bishopric could get out and get on the stand. And there was a hard end. We can't go past this because we have sacrament meeting,
Ooh,
right?
that's clever.
So
that's really clever. Yeah.
So that stopped.
That's strategy
like,
right
done.
there. Yeah. It's like,
Right.
well, we have to stop. We're running into the next meeting. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, like sacrament meeting. We got to stop. It's sacrament meeting. We can't run late here, right?
Totally.
And so that was another thing. And then, so like, listen, we only have an hour. I can't spend 10 minutes of it in a real lengthy spiritual thought. And so I would often send out just a reminder, spiritual thought's 2 minutes.
Whoa,
Right?
look at
handbook
that.
training should be like a minute, right? Like
Right.
here's what the handbook says. Here's my thought on it, and then we're gonna move on, right? So
Yeah.
continuing to remind the ward council in order to try to keep it, in line, so that we
I
could get
love
to
that.
the real good stuff,
Yeah.
which is ministering. Like ward council should be about ministering.
Hmm.
We need to talk about ministering to our ward. What can we do to improve our ministering for the ward? And when when I say ministering, I'm not saying the
Right.
actual
You're not saying like elders
individual
core
ministry.
ministering assignments or anything like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. You're talking
Yeah,
about
but
like
what are-
each organization actually ministering to the members individually. Like
Yeah,
Sunday
exactly.
school, Relief Society, primary. Yeah. Helping the members. Yeah. Totally.
Which calendaring really isn't one of those things. Calendaring is important, and we need to do it, especially if we're trying to plan an activity.
Yeah.
But we can again put most of that into Slack and do that during the week, right? Like,
Right.
we've
So
got
and
our
when you
dates
say
set.
calendaring, you're talking about like the coordination between like activities, planning your activities out and getting, because that's another half of the meeting that goes. So there are 3 halves, and you go over every week. So that's the other half is just calendaring, just figuring out, okay, well, when does this date work, and these are the activities we're
Right.
thinking about. Yeah, totally.
And where are we at with the planning? Who's got the food? Have we got the lists together? Who's
Yeah,
got the activity? Who's planning this? Right? Like,
yeah,
we don't really need to have that in there. Like when you get closer, obviously you might be up against a little bit more, and that's going to dominate more of that conversation. But it doesn't have to every ward council
yeah,
and every bishopric and every PPI, right?
totally.
The other thing that is just in running the meeting, and this was the bishop's thoughts. He hated going around the room.
Oh,
And
really?
This is a weird concept, right?
Now, this
hated
is a
going
big
around the room.
cultural thing. Everyone goes around the room.
Yeah.
It's like you got to say your thing. Yeah.
Yeah, he hated it because what happens if we go around the room? I have to say something.
Right.
So, and especially,
right.
so when I was a young men's president, back when they had young men's presidents, when it got to me, I had to say something.
Right.
I had to say what we had done the previous week and what the plans were for the next week. And I had to take my 5 minutes and say something. If not, I wasn't doing my calling. Right? I got to prove to the ward council that I'm doing my calling. Right. And he just hated that because he's like, everybody says the same thing every week.
Right.
And we're only saying it because we have to say something because it's our turn.
You've got to you've got to prove that you are actually doing your calling. So it's almost like speaking in LinkedIn resume talk, every single week, where you're just like, I facilitated conversations between different people throughout the week, and it was very productive. It's like, oh, you send a text message to somebody. Does everyone need to be a part of this conversation? I don't think so. Yeah.
Right. And so the agenda was more built around the ministering, right? Like, welfare, spiritual needs, right? Like missionary work. Like, what are the important things that we need to talk about? And then it was an open conversation. There wasn't, okay, it's your turn to report to the ward council about what's going on. Right? We
Ooh,
knew
I
because it
like
was on
that.
Slack.
Yeah.
Right? And your report should be a part of the conversation that we're already having.
So the meeting was just discussion at that point. It was
Yeah,
zero like micromanaging, zero tell me what you did, show me your homework and show me how you got there.
absolutely.
It was
Yep,
just we've got problems, let's talk about these problems.
that's
These are our
exactly what it
focus
was.
areas.
Yep.
Love that.
And let's have a conversation. Let's talk about how we can solve some of these problems that we're having right now as a ward council. And so it was so effective that we had ward council once a month and had
Wow.
got no complaints from the rest of ward council. Things were still getting done.
What about the steak? Did the steak come down on you?
Okay, so this is good.
Okay, all right, yeah.
So my ward, we're a little bit of a maverick ward.
Okay. You're in good company.
When it came to COVID, we may have had an area authority come in and chew us out.
Okay.
Because we're just like, we're not going to force anybody to do anything.
Right.
We just want you to come. Right. And anyway, so we're kind of a maverick ward. The best part is my brother-in-law is in the stake presidency. So he's one of the councilors stake presidency.
Nice.
So I get to have conversations with him all the time. Right. And we have a great relationship. Yeah. And so I'd be like, yep, 20-minute bishopric meeting, once a week ward council. And he's just like, that's awesome.
You mean like, once a month ward council?
Yeah, right? Sorry. Yeah, once a month ward council. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so 20-minute bishopric meetings, once a month ward council.
And he's just okay with that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Keep it up.
I think that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're actually, the whole point is that coordination is happening. And if it's happening during the week throughout the Slack channels, I feel like we should culturally just take that into our minds and realize this is coordination. This is asynchronous coordination, which is so much more effective. Yeah, go ahead.
The alternative, and I know that you've experienced this.
Yeah.
Is okay. So 2 weeks later, when we have ward council, we said we were going to do this. Where are we at now? You know what? I didn't even think about it as soon as we left ward council 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's put it back on the agenda. Let's see where we're at in 2 weeks. And it just nothing gets done.
Well, the problem is, like, if you're doing back-to-back-to-back meetings, you almost train people to stop doing work outside of the meetings because those people are so burned out by the time they're done with those meetings. They're like, I got to go home. I can't think about this anymore. And it takes them about a week to recover. And then they get back and they're like, hey, did you do those things? And you're just like, what things? And then you're like, oh, yeah. And then you just try and do them quickly in the meeting.
In the meeting.
Like,
exactly.
In the meeting. Everyone's just like, oh, crap. Yeah, let me just do that real quick.
And even I was guilty of that. Like, we would have these conversations about someone would still slip. A bishop would be like, hey, were you able to get so-and-so in? Oh, my gosh. Yep, they said they would come in, right? Really quick on my phone. I'm texting them.
Right,
right. And I mean, obviously it still happens. We're still human, but like we could keep the conversations going throughout the week so that by the time we got back together, something had happened. Something had changed.
Yeah.
And so we could move things forward. And that just feels great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So what kind of pushback did you get for implementing a system like this? Like, you guys are mavericks, you're out there, you're breaking the rules. I got to imagine there's like a high priest or a sister out there who was like, I don't like this. This isn't how it was done.
I never got it.
Wow.
The biggest pushback really is just the technology.
Yeah. And so how did you overcome that? I've struggled to get people onto simple group me chats where they're like, no, this is too complicated. Okay. Just send me the text. Yeah. Go ahead.
For one, and I hope somebody from the business side of the church is listening. Circles sucks.
Yes.
Okay? Yeah. Like we tried to push it when it first came out, never worked.
Right.
We're new bishopric about 6 months ago. Like, let's try it again. They wanted to try it with, okay, let's try it with a young man. Wouldn't work. Like, I would get an alert and then I couldn't read it, and when I'd click on it, like nothing would be there. I'd click on it and it wouldn't show anything. Like, okay, this is so group me and other things, right? I'm a DevOps engineer, and being a software developer by training, and worked my way into a DevOps engineer role.
Yeah.
Like, so technology is kind of my thing. I enjoy it, and I love to learn it and play around with it.
You're getting Slack notifications for your dishwasher, right?
Right. Like, yeah, exactly. And so that's just kind of my calling within the ward, right? I'm a stake technology clerk. I'm a ward technology. And so I would just sit down with a new member of the ward council and be like, "Okay, I'm going to send you an email. You're going to get that. You're going to get an invite from Slack. Let's get it installed. Let me show you how to do it."
Yeah.
And spend 10, 15 minutes with them, and they would have it. So the oldest member of our ward council, he's, I think, 73, 74.
Yeah.
He's on Slack all the time sending us messages, right? Like,
wow.
got it. Like,
So
if they
you
know how
figured
to
it out.
text, they can do it.
Right.
And I remember I had one member of the ward council that he just really drug his feet on it.
Yeah.
And because he liked texts. And I'd just be like, "Listen, this is where we're having the conversation. I'm not going to text you. I'm not doing it. Like,
wow.
this is where it's at. So if you want to know what's going on, you need to be here."
So how much of that did you have to play? Like when people were, did you get a lot of people that started texting outside of Slack? And did you have to go and approach them and say, "Hey, let's move these conversations inside the channel"?
Not very often.
Okay.
Not very often. What's interesting, I just started another Slack channel because I'm also on a soccer board.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we need to have these conversations in, because we were getting group chats.
Yeah.
Or yeah, these group
the text
texts
threads,
or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, we got to move it all into here. And I still I'll be like, send it on Slack, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that everybody can see it, because you missed somebody in this specific group chat, right?
Totally.
And so really, we haven't had that problem within the ward. And our ward council, for the most part, is I'm going to say fairly young, right? Like, we don't have like some super, like I said, 73-year-old. He's our oldest, and he's done fine with it. What I think the motivation to them is when they find out they don't have a whole lot of meetings and really long meetings.
Yeah.
Oh, I can just have a conversation here and we don't have to have a meeting. Yeah, let's do that. And because nobody wants to be in a meeting. So when the new bishopric came in, the whole ward council, they've told me on the side, they're like, we were nervous because we thought maybe we'd have to start going back to long meetings. And when I sat down with the new bishopric, I'm like, "Hey, this is what we're doing. This has been the result." And they're like, "Let's keep it going," because I don't want to have hours long meetings either. Right.
Wow.
And so we just kept it going. Like, once they saw what it was doing, then they're like, "Perfect, let's do that."
Okay. And so the result was you had a 20-minute before church, right? Or is it 30 minutes before church?
As a bishopric, usually 20 minutes. I bumped it up. I just got released about 3 weeks ago as executive secretary. So when I say, it was now 3 weeks ago. I bumped them out a little bit longer. And that's just because of the personalities of the bishopric, right? Like, they seem to talk slower.
Yeah.
So the conversation just kind of went a little bit longer. Just kind of adjusted, because we were doing 20 minutes, and I'm like, you know what? We're really pushing that time to get out of sacrament meeting, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's bump it back a little bit so you guys can get out there, because we consistently were pushing a little further. So it would be that 20 minutes, 30 minutes in order to what are we doing today in church?
Yeah.
And where are we at? And let's make sure we got everything put together. So then I would have, okay, here's your sacrament meeting agenda, and like,
here's a coordination sheet. Yeah, here's all that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here's all your stuff ready to go. Get that printed for them. And then this is what we've got on the calendar. Google Calendars doesn't work great on Slack. I've just personally not had a good experience, because it wants like my personal Google Calendar and not the bishopric calendar that I had.
Yeah.
And that was another thing, using Google Calendar so that they'll invite all the members of the bishopric to that calendar so they could see what was going on. Then I would just screenshot it and stick it in Slack. Like, here's your schedule. This is what we got after church. And then go, okay, I can easily see it.
So how many hours of meetings are you looking at in total for the average, excluding like sacrament, and your regular time block? How many hours was the average Sunday?
Let's say it was a ward council Sunday.
Yeah.
So we'd have like 20 minutes of bishopric meeting, an hour of ward council.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards would be about an hour between doing interviews and setting aparts. And then just a quick powwow as a bishopric. Usually is about an hour. I mean, if it was a busy Sunday, an hour and a half.
So all of like the youth meetings and stuff like that was just mainly happening in the Slack channels. Is that what you're saying?
What do you mean youth meetings?
So like if bishopric is sitting down with like the young women presidency, then most of that's just coordination.
We would have PPIs, right? They'd still have their PPIs. the bishop would, but that would be one Sunday, would be a PPI Sunday. The next
Gotcha.
Sunday was a ward council Sunday. The fourth Sunday was um, ward youth council,
Yeah.
and so then we'd have one Sunday that we just didn't have anything, right? Like
Yeah.
we just had a bishopric. We had two Sundays really, would just be bishopric meeting, and then after church, and then we'd be done.
Wow.
Yeah,
That seems so foreign.
It
There's a
is.
piece of me inside that's just screaming like everything would fall apart without our meetings, you know.
And it's funny because I had a friend serving as a counselor in a bishopric at the
Yeah.
same time, and we were at seminary graduation. We get done with seminary graduation. I'm busy with him. He's like, "Well, I got to get back to the church to finish bishopric meeting."
Yeah.
This was at 8 o'clock at night. This was after seminary graduation. I'm like, "What do you mean finish bishopric meeting?" He's like, "Well, He's like, it was only 2 hours. We still got an hour to go." I'm like, "What do you talk about for 3 hours?"
Oh no.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, why can't you do this in a half hour? And that was because he came. It was an old school bishop. He was
Yeah.
in his, mid to late 70s, and this is how we do it. He was retired, so he had all the time in the world. He's like, "Yeah, let's have meetings," and he basically had ward council every week.
Wow.
And my sister-in-law was in that ward council, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's every week, and it's like 2 hours every week."
Right.
And man, the last month of ward councils that I was in, we didn't even fill an hour. Like
That
we
is
all, it had all been
incredible.
talked about. We
Yeah.
didn't have anything to talk about.
So the when it comes to this new bishopric that came in after you were released, do you know, are they still using the Slack channel, or are they
So
trying new
I
things?
stayed on board for 6 months with the
Yeah.
new bishopric. So we kept it all going, and then what I said is I'm going to continue to maintain it because I'm
Yeah.
the tech guy.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
they're going to ask me anyways. I'll continue to maintain it. I basically stayed with them for about 2 weeks. Went to bishopric meeting and helped transition the new executive secretary because he's not a tech guy at all, right?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I blew his mind, the poor guy. But
Yeah.
I'm like, listen,
But I mean, the
it's
tools
way
are pretty
easier than you think.
simple. It's
Yeah,
like
pretty
it's
simple.
It's not that bad. It's just being proactive. Just like,
Yes.
be proactive.
So
Prepare
did
your
the
agenda.
training,
Get out there. Yeah. Go ahead.
and then I kicked myself out of all the private channels,
Yeah.
and I'm now serving as a advisor to the priests. So I kept myself in the youth one, so I could have those conversations with the bishop about young men's. And I'm like, hey, as ward council changes, just let me know. I'll send the invite. I can train them if I need to, and then we can
Yeah.
get them put into Slack, so you guys can just keep going.
So did you set up any channels, speaking of like the youth, that like included the parents in those conversations so that you could just handle all of your communication in there? Or did you have a different method to communicate with parents and youth outside?
So it really it boiled down to each of those classes and quorums. So
Yeah.
the young women's presidents, they're not using GroupMe. They've got another one.
Okay. Yeah.
But they decided just to use one of those apps. And then the deacons and the teachers, they're using GroupMe because I've got a deacon and I've got a teacher, so I'm on both those.
Yeah.
And then the bishop set up band because he's a head basketball coach, and so he used band for his team. So he's like, I'm just going to put all the priests on band, right?
Sure.
And so there's a problem with that, but that's a different conversation.
Sure.
Like I've got like 4 different messaging apps on my phone in order to communicate with all the different, just because
Right.
I've got all the kids that I have, right? Like in order to try to stay on top.
But for anybody listening to this, it's better than text messages, okay?
By far,
Yeah.
so much better.
Yeah.
Like text messages are the worst.
Yeah.
And so the fact that the ward is using all of those tools on their own is awesome,
Yeah.
right? Like that they know that communication, collaboration, we got tools available. Let's use them so that we can
Absolutely.
keep conversations going. So it's exact same in my deacons quorum and teachers quorum. Like I get notifications all the time from those advisors that are adding events and updating us parents about what's going to be going on and right? Like
Yeah.
those tools are there. We've got the phone in our pocket already. We know how to text. It's not much different than that. So let's use it.
That's absolutely right. I've been thinking about this for a long time because, I mean, we have somebody that will audit our most valuable resource, which is tithing, right? But
Right.
I also think that we should have somebody that audits an even more valuable resource, which I think is our time. Because once you spend that time, you don't get it back. And so, so someone like you that is going out there, that's auditing people's time and saying like, how can I improve this? I think that's phenomenal. And I think like if it's kosher with the handbook, I did some glancing this morning. I think bishops are fully in their rights to call somebody that's like, hey, almost like a chief operations executive, like, hey, can you just look at what we're doing and show us how we can save time? Give us some recommendations, and then I can pray about those. Seek that personal revelation. If I feel right about it, we can do it. And it's scripturally based too. You had the example of like Jethro and Moses, where Moses was meeting individually with every single of the Israelites, and Jethro came and said, "You're killing yourself. You can't do this anymore. You got to delegate, manage your time a little bit better." I see the spirit of Jethro in these Slack channels, and I think that's phenomenal.
That is, and a lot of this is going to come down to really kind of the bishop and his personality and how he likes to see things. If he's a super micromanager, might have a hard time doing some of these things, right? Yeah. But if he values his time and wants to spend more of it with his family or more of it in members' homes, right, then let's cut the time out of the meetings.
So what would your advice be if there are any leaders out there that are stuck in endless meetings and that are hoping to get out of them? What's something that they could do to try and push that ball a little bit further down the court?
Well, I think that you need to, what's your goal of the meeting? Like, you need to have a goal. And if you look at it and you're like, we're not doing that. And if you feel like it's just the same meeting over and over again, then you need to reevaluate what that meeting is and how it's being ran. And then, like you said, maybe look into the ward and see if there's somebody who has a skill set or a talent within the ward that might be able to help make some of those adjustments. Generally speaking, I think most people hate being in meetings, right? Like if you can shorten a meeting, I don't think you're going to get a lot of complaints.
Totally.
Right. And is it Elder Packer that said, if you're having a meeting, it had better be better than no meeting?
Yeah. I think it was him or Jay Golden Kimball or someone like that,
someone like that.
yeah.
Which just rings true. Like, and sometimes we have meetings just for the sake of having a meeting. And then you also have that after meeting, and you have the, you can move all that to Slack, right? Like, let's have the after meeting on Slack. I'm going to go home.
Yeah, right? That's right. Well, I mean, especially in the age of home-centered church, like, we got to get families, keep them in the home, because that's the gospel learning center now. It's like, keep them in the home, and they can get to those Slack messages when they have time and when they're fully present and able to handle those. And
that's
when they've
what's
processed
beautiful.
Everything. Yeah.
Right. Like, and I do love text for that, but for Slack or Mattermost or Discord or whatever it is that is being used, like, that's what's awesome. I'm going to send you a message. I don't expect you to respond to me right now.
Right.
When you've got a chance to look at it and think about it, then send me a response. And I love it.
Totally.
Now I work from home. I sit on my computer all day. I see that message right away. Right. So I can respond to the ward council, pretty much right then, and just keep things going. But you don't have to, right? Like, let's, at the end of the day, like, maybe you don't have that ability at work, and that's totally fine. That's why it's there. It's still sitting there. And I can scroll up and see what the history was. Oh, yeah, that's right. We had this conversation, and this is where we're at now with it. And so now I can give my input.
Totally agree. Yeah.
And some of the other cool things that I just was great, like, we would sit in ward council, and as we'd have conversations, I would find the talk, or I would find the section in the handbook, or whatever it was, and I'd throw that on the Slack channel. Yeah. So they'd be like, oh, now I've got it. I can click on it, and I can look at it. Or whatever it was, right? Like, if we had area authority training that we were supposed to be looking at, bam, there's the area authority training. Now you don't have a reason not to see it, because I just sent it to you, right? Like, you're just, again, keeping that conversation going and the collaboration going.
That is phenomenal. Like, I think if there is one video that I've been most excited to shoot, it's this one, because of the amount of time that I spend in meetings on Sundays and stuff like that. So this is completely speaking to me on multiple levels, because I'm also big into time management. So this is phenomenal. I hope that the viewers are able to get something out of this.
I hope so.
I'm wondering, we might be able to talk about this more offline, but if there's some kind of like template or screenshot, if someone's curious about looking into Slack and like how you set it up, if there's some kind of screenshot we could send them of like, hey, here are the different channels. That way, if they are interested in passing it into maybe like pitching it to like a bishop or something like that, saying like, hey, this is how we could do it. This is what it looks like.
I'm gonna have to.
You'll have to scrub out some information.
Maybe I'm just make one up because I kicked myself out of all of those channels, so I can't see them anymore.
Right.
But I can get with them, be like, "Hey, take a screenshot for me," and then we can scrub it or whatever. But
I think that would be awesome. Yeah. And then they can bring that, because I feel like a lot of times in the church we just default into whatever has been done before, and people just don't know what it looks like. But if they can actually see it, I think that changes the game. Just like that other ward that saw the Slack channels, they saw the coordination happening, and they were like, I don't want to mess this up.
Right.
And so I think that's the key, is if we can show it to people, I think they can envision it and actually see how it works, and then they see the time that they get back.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty.
I appreciate the church is very much technology, or they're pro technology, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like moving very much in that direction. And so we're just using these tools and resources to make us better at ministering.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for coming on, taking time out of your schedule to come and meet with me in another meeting. But but I really appreciate this. I hope that someone else can take something out, and ward councils out there can get a little bit more efficient, and we can give more time back to the members of the church.
Right.
So
I hope so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Until next time, I'm Hayden Holm. This is Cade Price, and this is Salty Saints.